Welcome to Go There on Fourth, a Christian video podcast about faith, football, and fantasy football. I'm Pastor Jason Barnett, aka the Dirt Path Pastor, here to share with you my Week 3 insights. They will be terrible. Many of my game picks will be wrong. Much of my fantasy advice might cost you a win this week, but I'm going to share it with you anyway. That's the point of the show, is we are journeying through the fantasy football season together, and I'm just sharing my struggles with you along the way and having a good time. I'm not a football expert. I just love the game. I watch it. I'm coaching flag football. So I love the game of football. So let's jump right into our Week 3 game picks. Just focusing in on the Thursday night game and the early Sunday game. Right now, I'm at 7-15 on the season, so I'm at a 53% correct rate through 2 weeks of the season. But hey, at least I'm in the black. I started off 7-9, so I was happy to kind of get ahead of things a little bit after in Week 2. So first up, we have the Giants versus the 49ers. Right now, the Giants have only given up one passing touchdown on the season. But the problem is they've given up 5 rushing touchdowns in 2 games. I really like the 49ers in this one. You got a Shanahan-style offense, which is really heavy on the running game, with a talented quarterback and receiving core to go with it. I think they're going to overwhelm the Giants. Maybe not to the degree that the Cowboys did, but I think the 49ers get the win in this one. Titans versus the Browns. I'm picking the Titans just because I don't think the Browns have much offense without Nick Chubb. Yeah, Ford went off last week. And yes, I know he's been a popular pickup off the waiver wire this week, and I'd be lying if I said I didn't look at him and at least make a waiver claim for him myself. But at the same time, too, realistically, remember, a lot of his points, a lot of his yards came off one big run. Outside of that, the Steelers kind of shut him down. So, but I like the Titans over the Browns in this one. Falcons versus the Lions. The Falcons are playing some great football. They're one of those tough, scrappy teams that you don't want to play. That they can I feel like they can pretty much beat anybody on any given week between their defense, and they got just enough offense to get the job done. But I think the Lions are going to bounce back. They had a rough outing against the Seahawks last week, and I really think they're going to bounce back against the Falcons this week. Saints versus the Packers. I know the Saints defense is really good. I know Jordan Love This is his first year starting as the quarterback for the Packers. But I know the Saints are missing a lot of offensive weapons. Derek Carr still adjusting to the system. The system is still adjusting to Derek Carr. I like the Packers in this one, especially at home. Broncos versus the Dolphins. This might be trickier than we think, just simply because Patrick Surtain II is going to be covering, most likely, Tyreek Hill in this one. Again, it's not enough of a concern where I would take Tyreek Hill out of my starting lineup. But what will make this even harder is if Jalen Waddle ends up missing the game. He's in the concussion protocol. They've not said much about him. He's been listed as questionable pretty much all week. So there's a chance he may miss this game, and that's only going to add to the difficulties, because part of the problem in covering the Dolphins is you have Jalen Waddle on one side and Tyreek Hill on the other, or sometimes they're bunched together every once in a while. But those two receivers make it hard to be able to double team. So the focus won't be the same. It'll force other Dolphins receivers to step up if Jalen Waddle doesn't play. I still like the Dolphins in this one. I think they're definitely the better team in this. I think they will get the W. It just might be trickier and closer than what we expect it to be. Chargers versus the Vikings. Did anybody else listen to Brandon Staley's rant after last week about questions regarding playoffs last year and comments about the playoffs last year? It really reminded me of some of the other great coaching rants, maybe not to the degree. I'll never forget growing up and watching Tom Mora of the Colts, right? Or Jim Mora of the Colts. Sorry, Tom Mora was the offensive coordinator for a long time, but Jim Mora, when he was the head coach of the Colts when Peyton Manning got there with this famous playoffs. Oh, that was Herm Edwards. No, it was Jim Mora. He's talking about the playoffs. We can't even win a game, right? That rant. I also remember the Dennis Green rant, right? When the Vikings were playing the Bears, or no, the Cardinals were playing the Bears. See, that's I can remember Dennis Green coaching the Vikings before the Cardinals, but it was when he was at the Cardinals, and the Cardinals were playing, I think, the Bears on a Monday Night Football game, and they had the Bears on the ropes. The Bears had that defense with Brian Urlacher and that great team, and the Cardinals held them down, but the Bears came back and won. And Dennis Green, that's when he said, the Bears are who we thought they were. Again, this is just Coach Rant blowing off some steam in a press conference, and it is unfair, really, to look back at any team last season and say, well, hey, this is what they did last year. Well, that was last year. The team is different. The coaching staff's probably a little different. And teams have had time to strategize and plan against what they did last year. So it's hard to judge any team by what they did last season in this current season. Anyway, Chargers versus Vikings. I'm taking the Vikings in this one. Both of these teams are 0-2. Both of them desperately need to win, but I think the Vikings are going to find a way to get it done. Patriots versus the Jets. Mac Jones versus this Jets defense scares me some. Just because, yes, I know the Cowboys just torched them last week. Well, let's face it, the Patriots are not the Jets. The Patriots are not the Cowboys. Dak Prescott is a better quarterback than Mac Jones. Mac Jones is ascending. Mac Jones is playing some really good football. The Pats offense has looked a little bit better this year. But he's not Dak Prescott. He doesn't have the weapons that Dak Prescott has. He has CeeDee Lamb on the outside. He has Tony Pollard in the backfield. He has a good group of young tight ends in the mix now. So Mac Jones doesn't have those weapons. Yes, he has Stevenson in the backfield. Yes, he has Zeke Elliott now. They have Hunter Henry. They have Evan Bourne at receiver. They have some other talented receivers on that roster, but I just don't think they have the same level of weapons that the Cowboys do. And I'm willing to bet that Jets defense is going to come out fired up and angry this week. So, but even then, though, Mac Jones versus this defense scares me. But I'm still picking the Patriots over the Jets in this one. And that's mainly because the Jets are still trying to figure things out offensively. Bills versus the Commanders. I really like the Commanders this season. I think they are going to make a push in the NFC East this year. They're definitely going to make a push for a wild card spot. Ron Rivera, his defense has always played tough. And then now they have their quarterback in Sam Howell, who's made some incredible throws. Now, I really like the Commanders, but it's the Bills. Josh Allen and the Bills, and they got on track last week versus the Raiders, and I think that's going to continue this week. Texans versus the Jaguars. Interesting stat, Texans have only given up 382 passing yards on the season, but they have played Lamar Jackson. They played Lamar Jackson in week 1, and we can all admit now that Lamar Jackson did not look like Lamar Jackson in week 1. Lamar Jackson looked a lot more like himself in week 2. So that offense, and also Lamar was missing Mark Andrews in that game against the Texans as well. And let's face it, Mark Andrews commands a lot of attention from a defense, and that opens up other things from other receivers. But outside of that, yes, they have Beckham Jr., but now, I guess one red flag is Beckham Jr. is dealing with an injury. But that has nothing to do with this game between the Jaguars and the Texans. And then they also, so the Texans have only given up 382 yards, but they played Lamar and the week that Lamar was not Lamar. And then they played Anthony Richardson, and I love Anthony Richardson. I'm high on Anthony Richardson. I think Anthony Richardson has a bright future. Maybe I'm a bit biased, but I think he's the best rookie quarterback in this class. But Anthony Richardson has not developed the passing game yet. And then Mark Gardner Minshew came in and kind of cleaned things up in the end of that game. So, yes, the Texans have only given up 382 passing yards in the season. Yes, I know technically Trevor Lawrence has struggled against them historically thus far. But this is a different Texans team with a different system on defense. Yes, it's DeMeco Ryans, and he knows how to get that defense to work, I think. I think he's the right guy for the Texans. But I just like the Jaguars in this one, especially bouncing back after that tough loss against Kansas City last week. Colts versus the Ravens. This will be no shock to you. I'm picking the Colts in this one. But really, again, that's this week it's more of my fandom. again, as a Colts fan this year, it's exciting for me because I really have no expectation for what our win total is going to be. I really don't. I'm just along for the ride to have some fun. Because this is a really young team with a new coaching staff that I think they nailed the hire on. And so I watch every week just to see what happens. And I think they're going to be in a lot of games because our defense is incredible. That front line is scary good. The linebackers are scary good. The biggest weakness is our secondary. But again, that's only because our secondary is young and gaining experience. But the only way you gain experience is by playing and making those mistakes and learning and growing from them. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited about the future of the Colts. But in this one, I really think the key for the Colts in this game and the key for the Colts to win in this one will be our defensive discipline versus Lamar. We got to play sound, disciplined football. We got to stay in our lanes. We got to plug up the gaps. We got to keep eyes on him. We got to play good, fundamentally sound, disciplined football in order to beat Lamar Jackson and the Ravens this week. So I'm picking the Colts again over the Ravens. All right. So like I said, this is a Christian video podcast about faith, football, and fantasy football. And for the faith side of things, I always like to share a brief devotional. And my devotional today kind of centers around Justin Fields' press conference yesterday. Or I don't know if maybe it was Tuesday, but I'm pretty sure it was yesterday. And they were asking Justin Fields, what's one of the reasons he struggled in that last game against the Buccaneers? And maybe they were even thinking about, so far this season, everybody was expecting him to take a step forward because he started making strides toward the end of last season. And so the big question is why? What's going on? What's preventing him? And he made the comment, well, it might be coaching. And he makes that comment after, he's asked, why are you struggling? And he says something to the effect of, I'm just not going out there and playing football. I'm kind of playing like a robot, but I'm just not playing football. Implying that he's thinking way too much. And so he comes fired, and when they ask him why, that's when he says, it might be the coaching. And that sounds really bad. Social media jumped all over it. The reporters jumped all over that. Most of us as fans jumped all over that because it does sound bad. Whenever a player makes a statement about the coaching, from the outside looking in, it indicates to us that maybe they're not getting along on the inside. Maybe there's a disconnect that's causing all these problems. And as we think about that, we wrestle. It raises alarm bells for the Bears, and there's been some other things that happened with the Bears this week that gives cause for some concern. But it may not. Justin Fields might not meant that the way it sounded. It may not have been him calling out the coaching staff for not doing their job. What it might have been is Justin Fields simply saying, hey, listen, I'm getting so much advice from the coaches that I'm becoming robotic. I'm trying to figure out how to take the advice my coaches are giving me on how to play this game and how to implement the game plan and execute it. And I'm trying to robotically do it instead of adjusting their input and their game plan and my ability to execute it to who I am as a person and to my strengths. And so some of that might be the play calling. But what this is simply saying, this is a player that's saying, I am trying to figure out how to mesh who I am as a person with what's expected of me. And I think many of us can relate to that, right? We just get overwhelmed sometimes by the information given to us, and we know we need to adjust in order to improve or to make advances or to achieve what it is we're trying to achieve. We know we got to make adjustments to ourselves. But the problem is trying to figure out how to take all the information we've gathered and apply it to ourselves. Because the big problem we think is if we think so much of life is, this is not in my devotional plan, but we think with life so much that it's, if I just do A plus B, it will equal C, right? If I do this and this just like the information says, then I will get the result that I'm aiming for and the result that it says I should get. But that's not how those things work. That's not why that information is being shared. They're giving you a principle. They're giving you an idea. They're giving you facts on how to make it work, but how that's executed is going to be different with each and every one of us. And it's not just because each and every one of us is different, but it's also going to be different because we're in different situations, surrounded by different variables that will influence the outcome of those things. So again, we have to be able to take the information that's given to us, apply it to ourselves, and execute it within ourselves and what we're capable of moving forward. And I think that's where Justin Fields struggling. I think that's where he was coming from. But I think the issue is the interview platform in front of a room full of reporters. That's not the place to make that comment. And kudos to Justin Fields for apologizing, whether he was told to do it or whether it was genuinely from his heart. To me, that doesn't matter. I'm going to assume it was genuinely from his heart. But again, I think he said something being honest and real, and it got taken out of context from what he was trying to say. But that's not the place for that type of conversation. When we have a problem with someone, a news reporter is the last place you need to go and begin that conversation. That's not the place to begin a conversation like that. Okay, you may escalate to a point where you need to get a news network involved or somebody higher up involved that can help you, but that's not the place you begin those conversations. And again, we don't know what's going on behind the closed doors at the Bears facility. We just don't know. I'm assuming kind of the best here. That's just who I am as a person. I'm an optimistic person. I'm not going to view the worst of somebody else. For me to develop a negative view of a person, it's something they've had to earn over time. And even then, I'm going to give them more chances than I probably should. But the place for that conversation was between Justin Fields and his coaches. On the practice field or in the meeting room, on the telephone, via text message, even though that has some of its flaws, Zoom meeting, you name it. It was some type of conversation that would take place between Justin Fields and his coaches. And to me, that's the lesson in it for us in the devotion I want to share today is when we have a problem with somebody, Scripture tells us, Jesus tells us how we're supposed to handle that. In Matthew chapter 18, verses 15 through 17, Jesus says this. He says, if your brother sins against you, go and show him his fault, just between the two of you. If he listens to you, you have won your brother over. But if he will not listen to you, take one or two others along, so that every matter may be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. If he refuses to listen, then tell it to the church. And if he refuses to listen even to the church, treat him as you would a pagan or a tax collector. And so those are the words of Jesus and how we should handle conflict with one another. Now, I know my translation simply says brother here, but it implies to all of us, right? When we have a problem with somebody, we go to that somebody. We go have that conversation with that person that we have a problem with. You don't go to everybody else first. You don't go rally up your posse and go riding into there like it's the OK Corral, slinging words like bullets in a shootout. No, you go to the person that you have a problem with and you discuss it with them. Don't send somebody else to do it for you. Don't hide behind anonymity and being anonymous. Be a man, be a woman, be a grown-up. And go talk to the person you have a problem with, face to face if you can. In a way where they can hear your voice and you can hear theirs, so you can understand the tones. That's the problem. One of the issues with text messaging and Snapchat is you can't always convey the tone. I guess that's what emojis are for. But tone needs to be conveyed. And it really helps if you can see the person as they're saying it and as you're talking with one another. But go to the person you have a problem with. Don't go to everybody else. Don't drag people into it that don't belong there. And certainly don't go to social media and blast them on there without having gone to talk to them first. Go and talk to the person you have a problem with. Now, it's okay to vent, but when we vent, we go to people or a group that we trust. Don't go to your social media pages, your public pages, and vent on there. Because that person that you're angry at or you have a problem with, they may not realize they've done something to offend you, or they may not realize that there's a problem. And you've just blasted them on social media made them look terrible without ever having a conversation with them, giving them a chance to make things right. I think so many times we do that just because we're trying to justify ourselves in our own positions. That's what happens when we take to social media first without talking to other people. That's actually what happens when we take off and we go talk to everybody else before we go and talk to them. Now, again, that's different. I mean, again, it's okay to vent. It's okay to go to someone you trust and try and sort through things too. I think sometimes that's important to sort through our feelings. But man, the people we go to for that advice and those conversations need to be real friends that love us enough to tell us when we're wrong and gently correct us and guide us on how to handle situations. It's okay, but don't go to social media and do that. At least not your public page on social media and do that. Now, if you can't get the situation under control and figured out, then what you need to do, that's when you bring someone else into the picture. And encourage them to bring someone else into the picture, right? And that way the people in the room aren't necessarily just playing favorites. There's extra witnesses to pay attention and listen to what's going on. But even then, again, don't go to social media and blast them and bring others in that way right off the bat. No. Keep it confined to a smaller group. The only time we keep escalating to higher and higher forms of making groups and bringing people involved is if the situation can't be resolved. Now, there might become a time, and again, before I get to that, even then, I wouldn't go to social media, because then all you're doing is going to social media to make the other person look bad and to justify yourself. Because in the end, are we looking to justify ourselves, or are we looking for a resolution? A resolution is always more important than self-justification. Now, there might come a point in the conversation where you realize that there is no compromise. There's going to be no resolution that's going to come out of the conversations. Then at that point, the best thing you can do is part company. And how do you part company? Not through social media. You quietly just walk away from each other, or block each other, or stop messaging each other. Take a break. That's how you. But don't go to social media and do it, because again, that's not going to solve anything. All that's going to do is rally you up. It's going to rally your friends up. It's going to rile them up and rally their friends up. And all you're going to do is bicker and fight. And if there's one thing the world could use a lot less of right now, it's fighting with each other. No one wants to see you fight like two people on an episode of Cops out in your front yard, but on social media. That's the equivalent of what we do when we take to social media and we bicker and fight with each other. It's like we're standing in our front yard, maybe perhaps in our underwear, screaming at each other that you're an idiot, right? So don't do that. Don't take it off of social media. No, there's a right way to handle our problems. When we have a problem with someone, we go to the person we have a problem with. We bring others in if a resolution can't be met. And if a resolution can't be met, even by bringing others in, that's when we walk away. Out of respect for that person and the differences of opinions that we have. Well, if you enjoyed that devotion, I encourage you to check out the Ravenna Church of the Nazarene. That's where I pastor at. We're located at 530 Main Street in Ravenna, Kentucky. You can learn more about us by visiting ravnaz.com. And I also encourage you to check out my other podcast called the Dirt Path Sermon Podcast. That's where I share my weekly sermons. My sermon this week is coming from the book of Judges. And it's going to be on only one verse in the book of Judges. Looking at a guy by the name of Shamgar. You've heard of ShamWow, but you may not have heard of Shamgar. So you'll want to tune in. You'll either want to join us in person at 10:45 a.m. or you want to join in on our live feed at the same time on the Ravenaz Facebook page. All right, let's move on. Continue my game picks. In our late Sunday games, we have the Panthers versus the Seahawks. Bryce Young is on the road at perhaps one of the best fan bases in the NFL. One of the loudest fan bases in the NFL. That's against the Seattle Seahawks. And I think the Seahawks are going to win that one. Bears versus the Chiefs. 766 total yards given up by the Bears defense so far this season. To me, that's more alarming than the troubles that Justin Fields is having. Justin Fields is struggling early this season, and they're trying to figure their offense out, but that defense is giving up a bunch of yards here in the opening 2 weeks. But I'm picking the Chiefs in this one, right? The Chiefs' offense, they've been struggling, and this is a good week for them to get things figured out, to kind of get things sorted out, and especially, Travis Kelce's back in the lineup there. But this is a good chance for those wideouts to emerge, them to get the running game on track. So the Chiefs, I'm picking the Chiefs in this one. Cowboys versus the Cardinals. All I can say is be in prayer for Josh Dobbs this week. He's going against Micah Parsons. We need to cover him in a prayer of protection. Cover that offensive line in a prayer, because the Cowboys defense is the scariest defense I can remember seeing in a long time. I'm picking the Cowboys in this one. So here's my team this week. I like to share my team, how I'm struggling with setting my lineup with you each and every week. I'm in a 12-team PPR league with some custom scoring with church friends and some other folks. I'm off to an 0-2 start, and I'm facing the defending champion in this week. So at quarterback last week, I picked up Jordan Love, but this week Jordan Love is playing against the Saints, so I'm going with Brock Purdy versus the Giants. Again, that's a great matchup for Brock Purdy. My running back one is Tony Pollard. He's going against the Cardinals. Again, you don't take Tony Pollard out unless he's hurt, and definitely not against the Cardinals. Dameon Pierce versus the Jags. This is a dilemma for me. This is a struggle because Dameon Pierce has struggled. Now, the benefit I have is I'm in a PPR league where not only do you get points per reception, but you also, the custom scoring comes in, you get points for carries and you get points for targets. Why'd you do that as a commissioner, Pastor Jason? I did that because I like scoring. I like lots of points. And I also did it because, again, I wanted to give people a chance to feel like they could still win the game, even if they're down by a lot. I don't like people giving up before any matchup is over, before any season's over. So I like to give them different ways to give them hope. But anyway, so Dameon Pierce versus the Jags. I do not like this matchup at all. So I could bump up Breece Hall to my running back too, but Breece Hall has been struggling, and I don't think it's going to get any better versus the Patriots. So I may have to look for some other options, but there's not much out there. My receiver one's Amon-Ra St. Brown versus the Falcons. He's got a big red Q next to his name. That's my main concern, but I do have Terry McLaurin as the backup, so I felt very comfortable bumping him in. My receiver two is Jalen Waddle versus the Broncos. Again, he's got a big red Q, which again is my main concern. I did pick up Nico Collins this week. So again, if St. Brown or Waddle can't go, Nico Collins is a nice option. I think right now he and McLaurin are projected, at least according to our scoring, to be about the same points-wise. But we'll see how that shakes out. Tight end, I got Mark Andrews versus the Bengals. Lamar loves Andrews, and so do I. I am so happy I picked up Mark Andrews this year. Yes, it was a rough week one when he didn't start, but it was so nice having him back in the lineup last week. Glad you're back, Mark Andrews. At my flex, I have Breece Hall going versus the pass. And like I said, I thought I could jump him up to running back 2. If I don't roll with him at running back 2, he may stay at the flex. Or again, I might replace. I'm not going to drop him. But I'm starting to wonder, is there other options out there in the flex that might offer me some better chances? As a matter of fact, I could even move McLaurin or Nico Collins into that spot this week. But again, the way our league's set up, running backs tend to score a little bit more than receivers. So I just don't know. I'm not sure. That's where I'm struggling at this week. And I need to get it figured out because I'm at 0-2. And I don't want to be 0-2. I need to get in the win column. A defense. Last week I rolled with the Colts. I love my Colts. But I picked them to win. I believe they're going to win every week. But they're going against Lamar. And one of the quarterbacks that gave them trouble last year was Jalen Hurts. Right? And remember, Jalen Hurts won that game on a run play at the end of the game. Yes, I'm thinking back to last year, and yes, this is a different team. But, again, don't really trust it. Trust the Colts defense this week. So I picked up the Titans going against the Browns. Watson has 2 interceptions, and he's been sacked 9 times on the season this so far. The Titans have 8 sacks as a team on the season. So I'm rolling with the Titans in this one. And I'm also rolling with Nick Folk as my kicker from the Titans. But again, my biggest concern, my biggest struggle for this fantasy football week, in this week 3, is Bryce Hall. It really concerns me. Who should I go with? Who are some other options that maybe I'm not thinking about that would be worth giving a start? Send me a message, post a comment in the comments. Help me out. Shoot me your suggestions. I'd love to hear from you. Remember, I'm not a fantasy football expert. I'm just sharing my thoughts with you along the way. Continuing game picks, moving to our primetime games. Again, we have 2 Monday night games this week. I kind of enjoyed having 2 Monday night games. I did get really bored during the Saints and the Panthers game, but I really enjoyed the Steelers and Browns game. But the problem is I'm getting old, and I fell asleep midway through the 4th quarter of the Steelers and the Browns. But that was a good and entertaining game to watch. Steelers versus the Raiders. Can they pick it? Yes, they can. I'm picking the Raiders in this one. Eagles versus the Buccaneers. If the Eagles defense plays as the Eagles defense, I think the Eagles are going to win. Rams versus the Bengals. I'm picking the Rams. The Bengals are banged up. Interesting note, Stafford has 2 games over 300 yards, but only 1 passing touchdowns so far. If he keeps throwing for 300 yards, I think he's definitely going to get more than 1 touchdown. And especially against the Bengals, who are struggling in all kinds of ways this week. All right, to wrap up our week 3, I'm going to share some players I like, players I don't like. At quarterback, I like Mac Jones versus the Dolphins. Something is wrong with this. Hold on a second. I don't think I changed that one. I don't remember who I went with quarterback. Oops. All right, moving on. I don't like Daniel Jones versus the 49ers. I don't really like any quarterback versus the 49ers, but definitely not Daniel Jones. I like Josh Jacobs versus the Steelers. I know Josh Jacobs struggled last week against the Bills, but he's going up against the Steelers, who gave up a massive run to Jerome Ford in that game. I think and part of the problem for the Steelers defense is they're on the field an awful lot. And I think that's going to open things up for Josh Jacobs, because I think they're going to have to play. They're going to be on the field a lot again this week. I don't like Breece Hall versus the Patriots. I do not like Breece Hall versus the Patriots. He's been off to a slow and struggling start. He's in a back by committee approach, and I don't see him getting on track this week against the Patriots. Receivers I like any receiver playing in the Chargers and Vikings game. If they're a receiver in that game, put them in your lineup. I think there's going to be a lot of points in this one. It's going to be a great game. I don't like Tyreek Hill versus Surtain II, especially if Jalen Waddle doesn't play. Now, I'm not saying take Tyreek out, but I would limit my expectations of what his point totals are going to be. Tight end, I like T.J. Hawkinson versus the Chargers. Go back and re-listen to the part where what I said about the receivers playing in the Chargers versus Viking games. I like Hawkinson in that matchup. I don't like Hunter Henry versus the Jets. I don't. And the reason I say that is this. I think the Jets defense is going to bounce back. And who is the main target of Mac Jones outside of Stevenson and Bourne in that offense? It's Hunter Henry. Who's the one that comes up with the timely, big first down catches for the Patriots in that game? It's Hunter Henry. So I do not like Hunter Henry versus the Jets. I think the Jets are going to find some way to limit him in this game. Defense, I like the Eagles versus the Bucs. I love the way Baker Mayfield is playing. I'm so excited to see him bouncing back in Tampa Bay. But I can see him struggling in this one. I can see some sacks and some turnovers. We all know Baker can be prone to those things occasionally. And especially with the defense, the caliber of the Eagles, that really, in my mind, have not played to that level yet. I think they're capable of. I don't like the Bills versus the Commanders, and that might be a little bit shocking. Again, I think Sam Howell's for real. I think that offense is only going to get better as the season goes along. And I can really see for some reason the Bills have kind of gotten off. Yeah, they played well against the Raiders last week, but this is a different kind of offense. This is a more of a smash mouth style team too, with a little bit of attitude that can pass the ball. So I don't like the Bills defense. Even though I picked the Bills over the Commanders in this one, I don't like the Bills defense in this game. Well, if you have any questions about faith or football, please send them in. Again, if you have any advice for me on what I should do with Breece Hall, what I should do with my running back 2 or flex spot, I'd love to hear from you. Again, post it in the comments. Again, be sure to check out my other podcast, the Dirt Passerman podcast, available on all your favorite podcast app, and follow me on TikTok for devotional videos and other things. Until Tuesday, happy fantasy football.